In a valley surrounded by mountains, where the past clings to the residents like dust on their boots, exists a story that few people know. This is the truth about Samuel Colt, the rancher everyone feared, and Isabella Blackwood, the mayor's daughter with a secret buried as deeply as the roots of Riverton's century-old oak trees. What happens when a man scarred by war rescues the woman he once loved from the clutches of a forced marriage? What dark secrets might be hidden behind the political power of a small American town? And how can love, which many believed had died 7 years ago, rise from the ashes of betrayal? In Lonely Rancher Took in a Woman Sold on Her Wedding Day, you'll discover a story of courage, redemption, and second chances that will forever change the way you see true love. This emotional journey is divided into 4 chapters that will reveal, step by step, how a public auction exposed the corruption of an entire town and gave 2 wounded hearts the chance to heal together. If you're moved by real stories about people facing injustice and finding their way back to love, be sure to subscribe to the channel right now, like this video, and share in the comments if you've ever witnessed someone fighting against a corrupt system to protect someone they love. Your story might inspire others going through the same thing. Now, let's meet Samuel and Isabella. The summer heat pressed down on Riverton like a wool blanket, the kind of July afternoon when even the cicadas seemed too exhausted to sing. Main Street was unusually crowded for a Tuesday, townsfolk gathering outside the White Column Town Hall where Mayor Richard Blackwood had called an emergency town meeting. Samuel Colt sat astride his chestnut mare at the edge of the crowd, hat pulled low over his weathered face. At 42, the rancher's presence still commanded attention, not for friendliness, but for the quiet danger that seemed to follow him like a shadow since returning from Afghanistan. The whispers followed him everywhere in town: decorated Army Ranger, war hero, recluse. The most feared rancher in Willow County. "There he is again," murmured Edith from the general store to her friend. "Only comes to town once a month for supplies. Wonder what brought him here today." Sam ignored the whispers. His eyes were fixed on the makeshift stage where Mayor Blackwood stood in an expensive suit that strained against his expanding waistline. Beside him stood a young woman in a white dress, her dark hair cascading down her back, eyes downcast. Isabella Blackwood, the mayor's only daughter. "Friends and neighbors," Blackwood's voice boomed across the square. "We face unprecedented financial challenges. The dam project is stalled, investors are threatening to pull out, and this town's future hangs in the balance." Sam's jaw tightened. The dam project, Blackwood's pet initiative, had been controversial from the start, diverting water from smaller farms to benefit the mayor's wealthy supporters. "My family has always put Riverton first," Blackwood continued, placing a hand on Isabella's shoulder. "Which is why I've arranged a strategic alliance. My daughter will marry Calvin Harrington III, whose family has generously offered to invest $3 million in our community." A murmur ran through the crowd. Calvin Harrington, a notorious land developer from Chicago with a reputation for shady business practices, stood smugly beside his father. Isabella's face remained expressionless, but Sam caught the slight tremor in her clasped hands. "The wedding is Sunday," Blackwood announced. "But today, we celebrate with a traditional bride price auction, where Mr. Harrington has agreed to make his investment publicly." "This isn't tradition," called out Eleanor Wells, the elderly librarian. "It's a sale." Now, Blackwood smiled thinly. "My daughter understands civic duty. Don't you, Isabella?" When Isabella finally looked up, her eyes swept across the crowd and locked with Sam's. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. 7 years had passed since he'd seen those eyes up close. 7 years since she'd waited for him to return from his final deployment, until the news came that he was missing in action. 7 years since she'd given up waiting and moved away to college. "The bidding starts at $3 million, Blackwood announced, breaking the moment. "Does anyone wish to counter Mr. Harrington's generous offer?" The crowd was silent. This wasn't a real auction. It was a show, a public humiliation. $5 million, Sam's voice cut through the silence like a knife. Every head turned. Blackwood's smile faltered. "Mr. Colt, this is hardly the time for jokes." "The Bright Valley property," Sam said evenly. 5,000 acres of prime land, worth $5 million at least. I'm offering it for your daughter. Preposterous, Harrington Sr. sputtered. That land isn't worth half. That land controls the watershed rights you need for your dam, Sam interrupted. You know it, I know it. 5 million in land value, plus the water rights you've been trying to buy for 3 years. The mayor's face reddened as he conferred hurriedly with the Harringtons. Sam never moved, never took his eyes off Isabella, whose expression had transformed from resignation to disbelief. This is highly irregular, Blackwood finally said. But in the interest of the town, it appears Mr. Colt has the higher offer. Before anyone could react, Sam dismounted and strode forward, extending his hand to Isabella. Your choice, Miss Blackwood. I won't force you. Isabella's eyes darted from her father to the Harringtons to the townsfolk watching in shocked silence. Then she placed her hand in Sam's. I choose Mr. Colt, she said clearly. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers as Sam led Isabella to his horse, helping her mount before swinging up behind her. As they rode away from town, Isabella sat rigid, her wedding dress bunched around her knees. Why? She finally asked, her voice barely audible above the hoofbeats. Because no one deserves to be sold, Sam replied. Not even a Blackwood. What he didn't say, couldn't say, was how seeing her again had brought it all back. The summer nights by Miller's Creek before his final deployment. The promises made. The letters that stopped coming after he was captured. The world he'd returned to, where Isabella Blackwood had become just another broken promise. As the town disappeared behind them, Sam felt her gradually relax against him, exhaustion winning over wariness. Ahead lay his ranch, 3,000 acres of hard-won solitude that had been his only peace since the war. And now he'd brought Isabella Blackwood into it. Isabella woke to unfamiliar surroundings. A simple bedroom with pine furniture, walls the color of wheat, and sunlight streaming through cotton curtains. For a moment, disorientation gripped her before yesterday's events came flooding back. Her father's betrayal, the public auction, and Samuel Colt's unexpected intervention. She found clothes laid out at the foot of the bed, jeans, a flannel shirt, and boots, all clearly too large but clean and practical. The wedding dress lay discarded in the corner like a ghost. After changing, Isabella followed the smell of coffee downstairs. The ranch house was larger than it appeared from outside, with exposed beams and worn wooden floors that spoke of history. She found Sam in the kitchen, his back to her as he stood at the stove. You're up, he said without turning. Coffee's ready. Isabella studied him in the morning light. The years had hardened him. The young soldier with laughing eyes was now a man with shadows under them. A jagged scar ran from his temple into his hairline, and his hands, once smooth, were now calloused from ranch work. Why am I here, Sam? She asked, accepting the mug he offered. He met her eyes, then looked away. Seemed better than the alternative. $5 million better? Her voice carried an edge. That's what my father says you paid. Your father inflates values when it suits him, Sam replied. The land isn't worth that much. But the water rights are, Isabella countered. Years of listening to her father's schemes had taught her something. You just handed him control of the entire county's water supply. Sam's expression remained unreadable. Sometimes you have to lose something to win something else. And what did you win? She asked sharply. The question hung between them, unanswered as a truck engine rumbled outside. Sam moved to the window, his posture instantly alert. Sheriff Davis, he muttered. Sooner than I expected. Sheriff Davis was a tall woman with salt and pepper hair and the perpetually tired expression of someone who'd seen too much. She nodded curtly to Sam before turning her attention to Isabella. Miss Blackwood, I'm here to ensure you're unharmed and here of your own free will. I am, Isabella replied. Though I'd hardly call any of this my free will. The sheriff's expression softened slightly. Your father's claiming Mr. Colt coerced you. Says he wants to press charges for kidnapping. Sam remained silent, leaning against the doorframe with arms crossed. That's ridiculous, Isabella said. The entire town witnessed what happened. My father was selling me to settle political debts. That's his prerogative as your guardian, the sheriff replied uncomfortably. I'm 25 years old, Isabella countered. I don't have a guardian. The sheriff frowned. Your father submitted paperwork last year declaring you mentally incompetent after your incident. Court granted him conservatorship. Isabella's face drained of color. The incident, her breakdown after her mother's death, the grief that had spiraled into depression. She'd spent 3 months in a private facility, returning to find her teaching position filled and her apartment rented to someone else. Her father had insisted she move home, temporarily. He can't do that, she whispered. He did, Sheriff Davis said. Unless you contest it, legally you're under his authority. Sam finally spoke. And if she marries? The sheriff looked between them. That would complicate things. Spouse would have priority claim for conservatorship. We're not getting married, Isabella said quickly. Might want to reconsider, the sheriff said. Your father's determined. Without legal protection, he could have you declared incompetent and dragged back for that wedding to Harrington. I've seen the documentation. It looks legitimate. After the sheriff left, Isabella paced the kitchen, fury radiating from her. He planned this all along, she said. The breakdown gave him the perfect opportunity. Your father's always playing the long game, Sam agreed. The question is, what's yours? Isabella stopped pacing. What do you mean? You could contest the conservatorship, but that takes time and money you don't have. You could run, but he'd find you eventually. Sam's eyes held hers steadily. Or you could stay here, under my protection. As what? Your wife. The word felt strange on her tongue. On paper only, Sam clarified. You'd have your own space, your own life. I'd have no expectations. Isabella studied him, searching for ulterior motives. Why would you do that? Sam looked away, his profile silhouetted against the morning light. I owe you. For what? For waiting as long as you did, he said quietly. Most wouldn't have lasted a year, let alone 3. The old pain surfaced, the endless days scanning casualty lists, the nights staring at a silent phone. Your letters stopped coming. Then they said you were MIA. What was I supposed to think? That I was dead, Sam said simply. It would have been easier. What happened to you over there, Sam? She asked softly. Before he could answer, the sound of vehicles approaching interrupted them. Sam moved to the window, his expression darkening. Harrington's men, he said. 6 of them. Isabella joined him at the window, watching as armed men exited 2 black SUVs. They can't just come onto your property. They can if they're working for the man who thinks he owns the sheriff and half the county, Sam replied, reaching for a rifle mounted on the wall. Stay inside. As Sam stepped onto the porch, Isabella watched through the window, heart pounding. The visitors spread out in a semicircle, hired muscle in expensive suits, trying to look intimidating. Private property, Sam called out, rifle resting casually against his shoulder. Turn around. A man in a charcoal suit stepped forward. Mr. Harrington sends his regards. He believes you've acquired something that rightfully belongs to him. Nothing here belongs to Harrington, Sam replied evenly. The Blackwood girl, the man clarified. His fiancée. There's been a misunderstanding that Mr. Harrington would like resolved privately. No misunderstanding, Sam said. She's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go. The man smiled thinly. Perhaps Miss Blackwood should decide for herself. After all, her mental state is fragile. Her father's quite concerned. Isabella stepped onto the porch, standing beside Sam. You can tell Mr. Harrington and my father that my mental state is perfectly clear. Clear enough to recognize extortion and human trafficking when I see it. The spokesman's smile faltered. Miss Blackwood, there are legal implications. Which you can discuss with my lawyer, Isabella interrupted. Now get off this property before I file harassment charges. After a tense moment, the men retreated to their vehicles. As they drove away, Isabella released a shaky breath. They'll be back, Sam said quietly. I know, Isabella replied. But by then I'll have figured out my next move. What she didn't say was that standing beside Sam had felt strangely right, like muscle memory returning after years of forgetfulness. And that frightened her more than her father's schemes or Harrington's threats. Because trusting Sam Colt had broken her once before. The first week at the ranch settled into an uneasy rhythm. Sam worked from dawn till dusk, moving cattle, mending fences, and meeting with his small crew of ranch hands. Isabella found ways to make herself useful, cooking, cleaning, organizing Sam's chaotic office. They orbited each other carefully, exchanging only necessary words, sharing meals in companionable silence. On her 8th day, Isabella discovered the shed behind the barn. Inside, she found canvases, dozens of them, stacked against the walls. Landscapes mostly, painted with an expert hand, capturing the rugged beauty of the ranch in all seasons. In the corner stood an easel with a half-finished portrait. Her own face looked back at her, younger, smiling, with wildflowers in her hair. "You shouldn't be in here," Sam's voice startled her. Isabella turned to find him in the doorway, expression unreadable. "You never told me you painted." "Started in therapy. After." He didn't need to specify after what. The capture, the imprisonment, whatever had happened overseas that had left him both physically and emotionally scarred. "They're beautiful," she said softly. "They're private." His tone wasn't angry, just matter-of-fact. Isabella approached the unfinished portrait. "When did you start this one?" "6 years ago. Never could get it right." The revelation struck her. He'd been painting her from memory all these years. "Why didn't you come find me when you got back?" she asked, the question that had haunted her for years finally spoken aloud. Sam moved to the window, looking out at the rolling pastureland. "I was in a military hospital for 14 months. Rehabilitation for another 8. By then you'd moved on." "Moved on?" Isabella repeated incredulously. "Is that what you thought? Your father showed me the engagement announcement. You and some professor from your graduate program." His voice was carefully neutral. "Said you'd been happy until I showed up again." Isabella's blood ran cold. There was no engagement. No professor. "I withdrew from my program after Mom died." Sam turned to her, confusion crossing his features. "The newspaper clipping was a lie," Isabella finished. "My father excels at those." The truth settled between them like a physical presence, years lost to a deliberate deception. "I came to your memorial service," Isabella said quietly. "They gave me a folded flag. I waited 3 years, Sam. 3 years of hoping, until they declared you legally dead. And even then," she couldn't finish. Even then she had never truly believed it. Had never truly let him go. The distance between them suddenly felt unbearable. Sam took a step toward her, then stopped, as if hitting an invisible barrier. "We can't go back," he said finally. "I'm not asking to," Isabella replied. "I'm just trying to understand how we got here." Before Sam could respond, his phone rang. The call was brief, his expression growing darker with each passing second. "That was Elena Rodriguez," he said after hanging up. "She works at the county records office. Your father filed an emergency petition this morning. Judge Winters signed an order for your forcible return to his custody, citing your deteriorating mental condition and claiming I've been drugging you." Isabella's laugh was bitter. Of course he did. When he can't win legally, he manufactures evidence. "Sheriff Davis is on her way with deputies," Sam continued. "Elena says they have orders to use whatever force necessary." "We could run," Isabella suggested. Sam shook his head. "That makes us look guilty. Gives credibility to your father's claims." "Then what?" "I won't go back, Sam. I can't." Sam's expression was resolute. "We get married. Right now. Before they arrive." "What? How would that?" "Judge Keller owes me a favor," Sam explained. "He can do it by phone in 5 minutes. As your husband, I can immediately file for transfer of conservatorship. It won't stop them from taking you today, but it gives us legal grounds to fight back." Isabella stared at him. "You're proposing a marriage of convenience? To a woman you haven't seen in 7 years?" "I'm proposing a solution," Sam corrected. "Temporary if you want it to be." The sound of approaching vehicles made the decision urgent. Isabella thought of returning to her father's control, of being handed to Calvin Harrington-like property, of having her freedom stripped away completely. "Call your judge," she decided. Judge Keller performed the ceremony via speakerphone while Sam's ranch manager and housekeeper served as witnesses. The vows were standard, spoken clearly but without emotion. When Sam slipped a ring onto her finger, his mother's, he explained briefly, Isabella felt a surreal detachment, as if watching someone else's life unfold. They'd barely signed the marriage certificate when Sheriff Davis arrived with 4 deputies and a court order. Isabella Blackwood, the sheriff began formally. Isabella Colt, Sam corrected, handing over the newly signed certificate. My wife is staying here. The sheriff examined the document, frowning. This complicates things. It clarifies things, Isabella countered. My father no longer has legal authority over me. The court order was obtained under false pretenses, Sam interrupted. We'll be filing a challenge first thing tomorrow. Until then, my wife stays here. Sheriff Davis hesitated, clearly torn between following orders and avoiding a potentially messy legal situation. I need to confirm the certificate's legitimacy. Call Judge Keller, Sam suggested. He'll verify everything. After a tense phone conversation, the sheriff reluctantly departed with her deputies, promising to return once she'd sorted out the conflicting legal claims. When they were alone again, the enormity of what they'd done settled over them. Isabella twisted the unfamiliar ring on her finger. This doesn't solve everything, she said quietly. No, Sam agreed. But it buys us time. Time for what? Sam's expression was determined. To uncover what your father's really after. This isn't just about you or the water rights. There's something bigger happening. How can you be sure? Because I know Richard Blackwood, Sam replied. We've been playing chess for years. This move is too desperate, too public. He's backed into a corner. Isabella considered this. Her father had always been calculating, patient in his machinations. This public auction had been uncharacteristically rash. Whatever it is, she said finally, we'll figure it out together. That night, as Isabella lay in the guest bedroom that was now officially her room as Sam's wife, she stared at the ceiling, processing the day's events. Down the hall, she could hear Sam moving around in his study, restless, like her. Their shared past hung between them like a ghost, not quite alive, not quite dead. The years had changed them both, carved new people from the young lovers they'd once been. Yet standing beside him today, facing down her father's schemes, had felt strangely right. Not because she still loved him, she couldn't, not after everything, but because they shared something rare, the absolute certainty that some battles must be fought, no matter the cost. Tomorrow they would begin investigating her father's schemes. Tonight, Isabella allowed herself to acknowledge a small, dangerous truth. For the first time in 7 years, she didn't feel alone. The next morning brought rain, soft, steady drops that turned the ranch into a watercolor landscape of greens and grays. Isabella found Sam in his study, surrounded by maps and documents. Your father's been buying up small parcels of land throughout the county, he explained without preamble. Seemingly random acquisitions over the past 5 years. Isabella studied the marked map. What's he planning? The dam doesn't need all this. I think the dam is a smokescreen, Sam replied. Look here. He pointed to geological survey markers across the properties. Every parcel sits on the same shale formation. Realization dawned on Isabella. Fracking. Sam nodded grimly. Natural gas deposits worth billions. But he'd need the watershed rights to secure enough water for the extraction process. The rights you control, Isabella murmured. That's why he was so desperate to get your land. And why he was willing to sacrifice you to Harrington, Sam added. The Harringtons have connections to energy companies that could finance the operation. Isabella felt sick. He would have poisoned the county's water supply for profit. And blamed any problems on the ranchers, Sam concluded. Classic Blackwood strategy. A knock at the door interrupted them. Sam's ranch manager stood there, expression grave. Town meeting's been called, he said. Emergency session. Word is Mayor Blackwood's announcing something big. They arrived at the town hall to find it packed, ranchers, townspeople, and reporters from neighboring counties. At the front, Mayor Blackwood stood with Calvin Harrington and several men in expensive suits. "This is a private town matter," Blackwood announced when he spotted Sam and Isabella entering. "Outsiders aren't welcome." "My wife is a Riverton native," Sam replied calmly. "And I own more land in this county than anyone else. We're staying." A murmur ran through the crowd as people noticed Isabella's presence and the ring on her finger. Blackwood recovered quickly. "Then you'll be the first to hear our wonderful news. Riverton Energy Partners, a joint venture between Harrington Industries and BlackRock Development, will be bringing unprecedented prosperity to our community." As Blackwood outlined the proposal, jobs, tax revenue, infrastructure, Sam quietly distributed documents to key community members: the water commissioner, the environmental compliance officer, several influential ranchers. "Mayor Blackwood has neglected to mention certain details," Sam interrupted, his voice cutting through the rehearsed presentation. "Like the environmental impact assessment that shows potential contamination of our aquifer. Or the mineral rights he's been secretly acquiring through shell companies." Blackwood's face reddened. "These are baseless accusations. I have the paperwork right here." Isabella stepped forward, holding up a file. "Transfer records showing how my father used town funds to acquire these properties personally. Conflicts of interest that violate at least 6 state laws." The crowd erupted in angry questions. Blackwood struggled to regain control, while Harrington and his associates quietly edged toward the exit. "My daughter is unwell," Blackwood attempted desperately. "She's been manipulated by Colt." "I've never been clearer," Isabella countered. "And I'm not your pawn anymore." Sheriff Davis pushed through the crowd, accompanied by 2 state police officers. "Richard Blackwood," she announced formally. "The state attorney general's office has some questions about your financial dealings." What followed was chaos, Blackwood being led away, protestations dying on his lips as reporters swarmed. Harrington and his associates disappeared in the confusion. Throughout it all, Sam stood silently beside Isabella, a steady presence as her father's empire crumbled. Later, as they drove back to the ranch through the rain-washed landscape, Isabella finally asked the question that had been haunting her. "What happens now? To us?" Sam was quiet for a long moment, eyes on the road. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether this was just about stopping your father," he said carefully, "or if there's something worth rebuilding." Isabella watched the familiar countryside passing by, the rolling hills, the stands of oak trees, the creek where they'd once promised each other forever. 7 years of hurt and misunderstanding lay between those promises and this moment. "I don't know if we can go back," she said honestly. "I'm not asking to go back," Sam replied. "I'm asking if we can go forward. Different people now, eyes wide open." Isabella thought about the past weeks, the quiet companionship they'd fallen into, the strength she'd found in standing beside him, the unexpected comfort of his presence. "The marriage was just a legal maneuver," she reminded him. "Yes," Sam agreed. "But it doesn't have to stay that way." As they approached the ranch, the rain began to clear, sunlight breaking through in golden shafts that transformed the landscape. Sam pulled the truck to the side of the road, at the crest of the hill overlooking his property. Their property now, legally if nothing else. "When I was captured," he said quietly, "I had one thing that kept me going. One memory I returned to over and over." Isabella waited, heart pounding. "You, standing in Miller's Creek with your jeans rolled up, trying to catch minnows. Laughing. The sun in your hair." His voice was rough with emotion. "It wasn't grand promises or vows that kept me alive. It was that one perfect moment of joy." Isabella remembered that day. The cool water, the dappled shade, the feel of Sam's hand in hers. A simple happiness that had seemed eternal in that moment. "I can't promise we'll find our way back to what we were," Sam continued. "But I think we might find something new. If you're willing to try." Isabella looked out over the ranch, the place that had sheltered her when she had nowhere else to go. The home Sam had built while carrying the memory of her like a talisman. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm willing to try." Sam reached across the space between them, his hand open, waiting. After a moment's hesitation, Isabella placed her hand in his. It wasn't a passionate declaration or a fairy tale ending, just two people choosing to walk forward together, eyes open to both the pain of the past and the possibility of the future. As they drove down the hill toward home, Isabella thought about vows, the ones her father had tried to sell, the ones she and Sam had exchanged as a legal formality. Perhaps real vows weren't made in white dresses or courthouses, but in daily choices, to trust again, to forgive, to build something new from the ruins of what was lost. The ranch house came into view, solid and welcoming against the clearing sky. Not an ending, Isabella realized, but a beginning. A chance to reclaim the vows that mattered most. The end.